Hey, what's up everybody? And it's that time again for yet another best Xbox Game Pass list. I typically do a video like this every 6 or so months as games are just constantly coming in and out of Xbox Game Pass. And you know, there's just a lot of really good games in Xbox Game Pass, and it's oftentimes hard to figure out where to start. So today we're going to take a look at the top 25 best Xbox Game Pass games available as of this video. Now, per usual, I did not include Halo, Gears, or Forza in this list as I wanted to give some recognition to some other games as well. You know, there's only a limited amount of spots and, you know, we pretty much know Halo, Gears, and Forza are among the best Xbox games, period. And, you know, honestly, Gears is one of my favorite franchises of all time, so that just goes to tell you what I think about a game like that. But regardless, do keep in mind that this list is only my opinion, and yours may be completely different than mine. And if that is the case, let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite games are. Now, if I do miss some of these smaller games, there might be a reason for that because I do a Hidden Gems list as well, so keep an eye out for the next Hidden Gems list for Xbox Game Pass. But with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into the video. And to start the list off, I have The Outer Wilds, which is a game that really took me by surprise. Games like The Outer Wilds is the exact reason that I love Xbox Game Pass so much because quite honestly, I'm not sure if I would have ever tried a game like The Outer Wilds if it wasn't for Xbox Game Pass. And this game, like I said, really took me by surprise. It's a game all about exploration and discovery. You're placed within a universe that begs to be explored. You get to travel to all these different planets that have their own unique properties, and every 20 minutes, the universe literally explodes to where you have to restart from the beginning. And that's where things get really interesting because you want to solve the mystery. Why is this happening? And with each planet, there's mysteries to solve and things to explore. The Outer Wilds is a little different than other games in the market, but that's a part of the reason on why this game is so special. This game, without a doubt, is something that you should at least try if you have Xbox Game Pass. And next up, I have A Plague's Tale, which is a great story-driven game. The story in this game really shines bright with you playing as two vulnerable children running away from the Inquisition in a rat-infested, plague-ridden world. And that offers a very atmospheric and glooming setting that really will grab you from the very beginning of the game. It's not just the story in this game that's so good, though, because the gameplay is very compelling as well. Since you're playing as two vulnerable children, you won't be able to just simply brute force your way through the game, but instead you'll have to use a more stealth-based approach. You're going to have to outsmart your enemies and complete various puzzles to reach your goals. This offers a very unique way of playing, so both in terms of its story and its gameplay, I think the combination is absolutely excellent in A Plague's Tale. Definitely give this one a try. Now, if you're just looking for a game that is simply fun, then Sunset Overdrive checks every single box. It has a world that just defies all reasonable explanation as you can jump on trees as if they're trampolines, you can zip across power lines, and you have a ton of creative weapons and gadgets. Of course, that's to be expected coming from the insanely talented Insomniac Games. They've made games like Spyro, Resistance, Ratchet & Clank, and Spider-Man, so of course, it is to be expected that Sunset Overdrive is just as fun, and really, it is among some of their better games. It's just an insanely fun game with its crazy over-the-top world. Now here I have a combination of two different beat-em-up style games being Streets of Rage 4 and Battletoads. Both of these are coming from legendary franchises, and after all of these years later, they're still a ton of fun. First up, you have Streets of Rage 4, which is probably the better brawler of the two. It really has that classic beat-em-up style gameplay, and it offers a great challenge. It's a ton of fun with online cooperative gameplay. And, you know, this is just, if you like beat-em-up style games, I really don't think you can get much better than Streets of Rage 4. Meanwhile, Battletoads is more of a multi-genre type of game. It offers smooth and fun beat-em-up gameplay, but it also has things like platforming and that infamous turbo tunnel section that was just so incredibly difficult back in the day. And yes, it's still extremely challenging, though with a twist this time. And on top of that, Battletoads also has a surprisingly good story that kind of plays out like an old school cartoon. And here I have one of the better horror games that I've played in recent years, being The Medium. Now this game kind of plays out like old school horror games in the sense that it has that fixed camera angle, But this game in particular really focuses on its story. The medium has a very compelling story with some of the better characters in a horror game that I've seen in a very long time. Though at the same time, it does kind of play out like a walking simulator with the occasional puzzles. There's not that much in the way in terms of action, but in terms of characters and story, the medium is really among the top games I've played within this genre. I always say that Kingdom Hearts is one of the more convoluted gaming franchises that's ever been made, but it's an experience that you absolutely need to play. These are just such magical games mixing in that Square Enix formula with Disney. And the combination sounds weird on paper, but it actually works very well. And I think Kingdom Hearts 3 definitely shows that off. It's got fast and fluid combat, the characters are very charming, and the story, while can be a little confusing, is always fun and entertaining. If you grew up playing old school JRPGs, then Octopath Traveler is a very interesting title. Octopath is a turn-based JRPG playing similar to something like, let's say, Final Fantasy VI, though it's got a lot of differences as well. Just as the name implies, Octopath Traveler allows you to play as 8 different protagonists. But what's interesting is that you can actually play each individual story when you want. Their stories don't actually interconnect with one another, though they can help each other in combat. It's a very interesting approach, though can be a little messy at times. Even then, though, there are a few stories that really stands out, and the combat is absolutely excellent if you like old school JRPGs. And for that matter, we might as well go ahead and talk about the games that inspired Octopath Traveler, being Final Fantasy. You can play Final Fantasy 7, 8, 10, and 12 in Xbox Game Pass, and each one of these are timeless classics for a reason. They are among the best games of all time, especially 7 and 8 on this list. Those games in specific, you just absolutely need to play if you like JRPGs. Outriders was a big surprise release for Xbox Game Pass because this is a big day one AAA title coming from Square Enix that launched directly into Xbox Game Pass. This just kind of shows you what the subscription service is capable of. And you know what? This is also a really good game. To put things simply, this is a really fun sci-fi RPG looter shooter. This is a genre that's very addictive for all the different loot that you can pick up, and I think that Outriders is among the best that we've seen thus far. It's got some fun superpower abilities, the skill trees are done well, the gunplay is exceptional, and hey, if you like playing cooperative games, you know, this game does have some good multiplayer as well. Wasteland 3 is actually one of the more underappreciated games that's released in recent years. I mean, honestly, I would say Wasteland 3 is actually one of the best RPGs available on the market as of this moment. Now, Wasteland 3 is a little bit more niche with that tactical RPG combat, but that's the beauty of Xbox Game Pass. You can try this game out for yourself and see if you like it, and I would highly encourage that because, you know, in terms of RPGs, you know, it's got great strategical combat, it's got meaningful decisions, and it's got a good narrative as well. And on top of all that, you can also play Wasteland 3 cooperatively, which adds a little extra fun. And here I have the sci-fi thriller first-person shooter Prey. And Prey pretty much has everything you would want in a game like this. It has a good story. It's also very atmospheric with you exploring a haunted space station. Its enemy design is fantastic. I mean, the Mimic in this game is one of the most interesting enemies that I've seen in gaming for a while. It can literally mimic anything within the environment, which will always keep you on your toes. And then the amount of creativity that this game allows with its level design is second to none. Sea of Thieves is one of those games that was heavily criticized when it first launched for a lack of content. But when this game started to get some extra content with some updates and patches, this ended up turning out to being one of the best games that released last generation, and it's still a ton of fun to play today. So Sea of Thieves is all about playing the role of a pirate and setting out on an adventure with your crewmates or solo if that's what you prefer. And there's a lot to do in the world of Sea of Thieves. You can go out and do story-based missions. You can go out and hunt for treasure. There's fishing. There's pets. You can go have amazing epic naval battles and so much more. And with every adventure you take, it's always different from the last and oftentimes will create long-lasting memories. And you know what? This isn't only a great game to play, but visually it is stunning as well. I mean, honestly, there's not a game that has better water visuals than Sea of Thieves, and on the Xbox Series X in specific, this game looks amazing. After years and years of waiting, Dragon Quest has finally made its way over to Xbox, and not only do you get one game, but you get two games that released directly in the Xbox Game Pass day one, and that's Dragon Quest XI and then Dragon Quest Builders 2. Now, Dragon Quest XI is more of your classic turn-based JRPG and probably one of the best the genre has to offer, especially in modern-day times. And then you have Dragon Quest Builders 2, which is more of a Minecraft type of game, but actually, I like this game even more than Minecraft because not only do you build things, but it has an actual story. And in fact, it's a legitimate JRPG. Grand Theft Auto 5 may be a little older now, releasing way back on the Xbox 360 and PS3, but even all these years later, this game is still just absolutely superb. And the numbers really shows that. This game has went on to sell over 100 million copies worldwide, which is just absolutely insane. And that's because it has a phenomenal story with well-made characters. It's got a great world to explore with a ton to do. And, you know, whether you want to just go out and drive cars, steal them, you want to play with your friends, or if you want a good story, Grand Theft Auto really has everything. Every once in a while, there's a big AAA game that just kind of flies under the radar, and Titanfall 2 is that game. Titanfall 2 is an insanely fun first-person shooter with great gun mechanics. It's fast-paced with you running across walls, gliding through the air, and it offers that finesse that you're looking for in a highly competitive, fast-paced, competitive multiplayer game mode. And then you can also wreak havoc with these big, huge titans, and, you know, it is just a ton of fun to play. But what's most surprising about Titanfall 2 is that not only does it have a great multiplayer, but its single player is just as good. So whether you like single player or multiplayer, Titanfall 2 is a must-play game. And here I actually combined two different RPGs coming from two different developers, and that's The Outer Worlds and Fallout. Now, both of these games do play kind of similar to one another, and there's a good reason for that, because Obsidian Entertainment did make The Outer Worlds, and they also made Fallout New Vegas, so it's not really too surprising that this game plays similar to Fallout, though I would actually say it's a combination of Fallout and Mass Effect. And the reason I say that is because in The Outer Worlds, you can fly to all these different planets and explore, and you will have a number of companions that can take the journey with you. And let me tell you, it's got a great personality to it. You have a lot of choices that you can make that truly impacts the story, and really you can be pretty much anybody you want in The Outer Worlds. If you want to save the universe by being your everyday hero, you absolutely can do that. Or if you just want to be a bumbling idiot and just kind of stumble and bumble your way through, you can do that as well. It truly is your choice. But then you have Fallout, and these are just classic games. Whether it be Fallout 4 or Fallout New Vegas, both are excellent in their own ways. And Fallout, instead, though, you're taking the journey in an apocalyptic world where everything was just brought to ruins. It's a very atmospheric game, and regardless of which one you pick out of the two, I truly believe both The Outer Worlds and Fallout are excellent RPGs and are definitely worth it. And to round off the top 10, I have Skyrim, one of the all-time great RPGs to ever exist. Now, this is a little bit of an older game, but it still stands tall as being one of the best all of these years later. And looking back on it, I think a large part of that is the world itself. It is just a world that you can truly get lost in. When I first played this game, I sunk 30 hours into this game before really even focusing on a story, because it has just so much things to do, and it's always fun. And here's the really cool thing. Even though, yes, this game is a little bit older now, it's been updated all the way up to the Xbox Series X to have that stable 60 frames per second with 4K resolution, so it still feels good to play all of these years later. Now, if you're looking for a good single-player driven experience with a memorable story, then HELLBLADE is a great choice, as this is actually one of my favorites. This is a game that really took me by surprise, because when you look at this game, first off, it looks amazing. But what's crazy about this is that this game was actually made by a small team of around 20 developers. Yeah, I still don't know how they pulled off a game that looks this good. But then the story itself is as equally as good, with a deep and an emotional story. HELLBLADE is actually a story about mental issues, and at times, you're going to be asking yourself what's real and what's not. This is hard to do in video games, but I would say HELLBLADE is an inspirational video game that really stands out, and by the end of it, you really connect with the protagonist, and that ending will really have you thinking for days or even weeks or years after it concludes. What happens when you combine Dark Souls with Titanfall and Star Wars and combine it all into one single game? Well, you get Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which, this is the second game developed by Respawn Entertainment on this list, which is kind of a testament to just how good this studio actually is. And once again, they prove that they can make great single-player campaigns, as Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is probably the best Star Wars single-player game to date, outside of maybe Knights of the Old Republic. So yeah, if you like Star Wars or if you like Dark Souls, then Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a fantastic game that you definitely need to try out. And for that matter, if you do like the Star Wars IP, you might want to try out Squadrons as well, which is also in Xbox Game Pass thanks to EA Play. Now here I have one of the most addictive games, not just on this list, but in gaming, period. And that's Monster Hunter World. Now, Monster Hunter has always been one of those games that's been really successful over in Japan, but for the first time, Monster Hunter World absolutely exploded worldwide, and for good reason. That's because this is just an absolutely fantastic game. The combat feels excellent, you always feel like you're progressing, and because of that, it's also highly rewarding, and then the monster design and their behavior is just amazing. I mean, there's not a lot of games that can actually do this, but Monster Hunter World feels like a real breathed-in world, and that's because of the unique behaviors of each individual monster. They won't just interact with you, but they interact with the environment as well as each other, and it's just a really cool experience. When you think of horror games, Resident Evil is always going to pop up on that list. And that's because for decades, Resident Evil has been among the best horror games in the entire industry. I mean, for the most part, they've just consistently made good games, and Resident Evil 7 is no different. Now, it is a little bit different than past entries, considering you are playing in first-person view, much like Resident Evil Village that just released. But for a lot of people, that actually added a little bit of extra immersion. But beyond that, Resident Evil 7 is not just a well-crafted horror game, but it's also got a good story. I mean, Resident Evil 7 is just a good game from top to bottom, whether that be with the story, the atmosphere, or in how it plays. It's just a really good game. I've been a big fan of Remedy Entertainment for years, as they really do make some of the best single-player experiences in the entire industry. I personally really liked Alan Wake as well as Quantum Break, but Control might be their best game yet. I mean, if you like games with good gunplay, you're going to like Control. If you like good stories, you're probably going to like Control. And if you like Metroidvania-style games, well, guess what? You're probably going to like Control. This is just such a creative game in its world and how the gun actually works. The gun can actually morph into several different weapons, and it's just really cool to watch in motion. You got plenty of superpower abilities, and so much more is happening with this game. And just to kind of add to that, it looks beautiful. All I can really say about Control is if you do like single-player story-driven experiences, then Control is an absolute must-play. After years and years of being a PlayStation exclusive, Yakuza has finally made its way to Xbox, and the wait was well worth it. I don't know how they managed to do this, but somehow 0 through 6 have all come to Xbox Game Pass day one. And even though it's a little intimidating to get into this series because that is 7 total games just in Xbox Game Pass alone, you're not going to play games that are quite like these. I really don't know if there's a studio in the industry that can tell stories the way Yakuza can. It's just a roller coaster of emotions with so many twists and turns along the way. You're going to fall in love with the characters and the world, and it's just an overall amazing experience. Now, these games can be a little goofy at times, and even with the combat, they're kind of over the top. But in terms of story and atmosphere, you're not going to find much better than Yakuza. There's kind of a strangeness to Nier Automata, but this game is a masterpiece. And I'm not just throwing that word out there. I really do believe Nier Automata is a masterpiece. The fast-paced combat feels perfect, and it has kind of this change of pace with different genres thrown along in there. The story is highly engaging, the world is atmospheric, and you care about what's happening. And then the soundtrack is among my favorites of any game of all time. This game, just from top to bottom, everything about it, I feel is just so masterfully crafted. Again, if I were just to simply explain Nier Automata in one word, it would be masterpiece. When Xbox purchased Bethesda, one of the best franchises that they ended up getting was Doom. And let me tell you, Doom Eternal is one of the all-time great first-person shooters to ever exist. When you first see this game, it just looks like mindless fun. It's a very fast-paced first-person shooter, but there's so much more to it than just that. You have to actually be methodical in how you approach each situation, and when you combine that with its fast-paced gameplay, it just feels like a complete rush. And you know, to kind of add to that, Doom Eternal is also a pretty good platformer, surprisingly. But yeah, Doom Eternal is definitely an all-time great first-person shooter. Now, this game might be a surprise for some people being at the #1 spot, but if we're going to talk about all-time greats, then Ori and the Will of the Wisps is absolutely an all-time great Metroidvania-style game. This game is just so head and shoulders above almost everything else out there. It is mind-blowing. It's got a well-crafted, emotional story. The visuals are stunning in motion. The world is fun to explore. There's plenty of abilities to collect. And in terms of platforming, I mean, this rivals even games like, let's say, Mario or Rayman. Like, the platforming is just so much better than any other Metroidvania-style game that it actually compares to platform-driven games. That's just how good it is, especially when you face off against the boss sequences, which will really put your platforming to the test. Now, with that said, I am going to go ahead and kind of combine Hollow Knight on this list as well, because Hollow Knight is another excellent Metroidvania-style game, and the big difference between it and Ori is that Hollow Knight is more focused on combat. So if you want more of a combat-driven experience, then Hollow Knight is a fantastic choice. Though, regardless, you can't go wrong with either, because both of these games are top of their class in their respective genres. Anyways, though, that's it for this list, but if I forgot to mention any of your favorite games, make sure to let me know in the comments below. With that said, though, if you liked the video, make sure to hit that bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel on Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.